Welcome fans of Fate Grand Order, I am Avon, this is FGO Tips, and today we are talking about Summer Servant Festival raid battles. These are some of the most challenging fights of the event that will be unlocked after you've cleared the main story and made Summer Jeanne d'Arc alter a permanent servant in your Chaldea. Clearing these raid battles will be the way to gain extra copies of Jeanne and get her all the way to NP level 5. You really want to clear all 4 if you want to get the most out of your Glass Cannon Berserker, so let's talk about these. As I mentioned, the prerequisite for unlocking these raid battles is the completion of the main story up until this point. That means clearing the quest that converts Jeanne from a temporary servant into a permanent one. On top of that, the raid quests are also time-locked and won't show up until sometime during the second week of the Summer Servant Festival event. There's 4 different bosses to defeat, and each one will award you an extra copy of Summer Jeanne Alter. You'll need to clear each one in order to reach NP level 5. Just like past raid battles, the enemy will have an overall health bar that's larger than the health bar you see in each individual fight. The damage you do during the fight will reduce their overall health bar, and after multiple fights, you'll finally be able to drain it completely. We've seen raid battles in earlier events, such as Onigashima and Rashomon, where all of us had to team up to bring down raid bosses with tremendous amounts of health. This time it's every master for themselves though, but thankfully the bosses won't have quite as much health to worry about. If everything goes well, you won't have to fight any of them more than 5 times. These battles also come with some extra conditions. For one thing, you can't revive after all of your servants are defeated. Not with Saint Courts, and not with command seals either. You can, however, use command seals one at a time to heal a servant or fully charge their NP gauge. I wouldn't rely on that as a strategy though, because there won't be enough command seals to get you through all of these fights. That said, if you're in a pinch, you can rely on them every once in a while. Just like previous raid battles, we also have a 15-turn limit per fight. This means that some of the super stall-based team comps centered around Ruler Jeanne's Noble Phantasm don't work especially well, but in most cases, you won't have to worry about the turn limit too much. If you do run out of turns before finishing the fight, the damage you have done so far will still reduce the enemy's overall health bar, but you will unfortunately miss out on drops for that fight. The same is true if your entire party is knocked out. The damage you had done up until then is still removed from the enemy, but you won't get any drops for that fight either. Just be aware that withdrawing early from a battle doesn't work the same way. If you choose to withdraw early, you won't deal any damage to the enemy or receive any drops. Now that we have that out of the way, let's take a look at the first raid. This is going to be a battle against Sesshoin Kiara. Be careful, because instead of her usual alter ego form, she'll be masquerading as a Moon Cancer instead. Moon Cancers inflict double damage against Avengers, and only take half damage from them. And normally they inflict half damage against rulers, while taking double damage from them. Unfortunately, this fight is a little extra difficult because Kiara has some special skills to mix things up. On top of that, she has a 3-turn NP gauge and a powerful AoE Noble Phantasm that ignores invincible status. Kiara's total health starts at 1.3 million HP. The first time you fight her, stage 1 of the raid, she'll have 200,000 hit points per fight. She also has a really unfortunate passive skill that allows her to deal 150% damage to rulers, instead of the normal 50% that a Moon Cancer should be doing. At the start of the battle, she will gain a permanent, unremovable buff that grants a 50% resistance against all attacks, and she'll apply a permanent taunt on one of your servants who will receive the focus of all attacks. If you remove that servant from the field or they're knocked out, she'll automatically apply the taunt on somebody else instead. During the battle, she also has a chance to use a skill which restores 3,000 HP per turn for 5 turns. If you manage to deal at least 200,000 damage to her in a single fight or multiple battles added together, you move on to stage 2. In this form, she will have 300,000 HP per fight and gains a new skill, which she could use to fully charge her NP gauge. If you manage to deal another 300,000 damage to her, you will move on to stage 3. In this form, she will have 400,000 HP per fight instead. Finishing any of the fights in the first 3 stages drops somewhere near 8,000 imagination points, so try to bring point boosting servants and CEs if possible. There are no BB bills, fluffy bills, or gill bills to be had, so don't worry about those craft essences. If you beat her completely 2 more times, or partially complete enough fights to add up to 800,000 more damage, you'll get to face her one last time. In her final weakened form, she'll only have 50,000 HP, and she loses the skill to fully charge her NP gauge, thankfully. You can't piecemeal this one, you have to clear the fight completely, and if you do, you'll win the first copy of Summer Jeanne Alter and reach NP level 2. This sounds like a pretty rough start, but there is a bit of good news. The unremovable buff that grants her 50% resistance to attacks is only active during the day. Who knew she would have the same weakness as good old Gawain? Make sure you complete a free quest during the day instead of fighting her, and then challenge her at night instead to make this battle a little bit more bearable. Your rulers will deal double damage to Kiara, but they'll take an extra 50% in return. Jean's Noble Phantasm isn't the best against Kiara's NP, unfortunately, so consider heavy hitters like Amakusa, Sherlock, or even Summer Martha instead. The other option is to pick out servants that do serious damage against females instead of relying on class advantage, looking at Carmilla among the 4 stars and Jack among the 5 stars. Berserkers can deal an extra 50%, but they'll take an extra 100% in return, so be careful as always. Try to bring someone like Kualter or Heracles with his Bond CE that might have some defensive abilities to keep them in the fight a little bit longer. Summer Jean Alter might be able to help out here as well if you've leveled her sufficiently by now, but just be aware that she has low HP even by Berserker standards. The second raid battle is against a Demon God pillar, but just like Kiara, it's going to be masquerading as a Moon Cancer. The Demon God of Coconut Milk will have 1.6 million hit points. At stage 1, you'll need to do 300,000 damage to win the fight. This thing has a passive ability to gain an additional NP charge per turn, and another which will inflict poison on all of your servants, dealing 1,000 damage per turn for the first 10 turns. It also has a couple of skills that it might use during its turn. One will remove any debuffs on itself. Another will decrease a single servant's defense by 20% for 3 turns. It's not a servant, so it doesn't have a proper Noble Phantasm, but when its gauge is full, it will use a charge attack which inflicts toxic status on all servants. This will increase the poison damage taken by 100% for 5 turns, which combined with its skills is pretty bad. It also decreases HP recovery by 50% for 3 turns. After dropping its total health down to 1 million, it will enter stage 2. None of the skills change here, but it's going to have 500,000 HP per fight instead. Each fight you complete during these first 2 stages will drop somewhere around 8,000 technique points, so try to bring CEs and servants to boost if you can. If you beat stage 2 twice, or otherwise get the overall health bar down to 0, you can face this pillar one more time. In its weakened state, it will have only 56,000 HP, but you'll have to make sure to complete the fight if you want to earn your second copy of Summer Jean and reach NP level 3. Just like the first raid, good timing is going to help you out here. It's not the sun we have to worry about though, just the day of the week. The Demon God of Coconut Milk will only gain the extra NP gauge charge on day 4, 5, and 6. You can make this fight a bit easier if you complete the cycle back to day 1 before continuing the fight. This time our Moon Cancer raid boss does not have a bonus damage against rulers, so bring anyone you can to help out. You might also consider bringing along a healer like Medea Lily, who can remove poison from the entire party with a skill and remove all debuffs from the party with her Noble Phantasm. Truth be told though, you might be better off dealing a lot of damage as fast as possible, instead of relying on healing and prolonging the battle too much. The other trait I'll mention here is that, like all pillars, this boss qualifies as a large enemy. That means Arthur, with his final skill max, can deal an additional 100% damage for 1 turn. If you combine that with his 20% NP battery, 50% mana burst, and free crit stars, you could do some pretty decent damage without even having a class advantage here. The skill's on a 5-turn cooldown at level 10 though, so you probably won't get more than 1 or maybe 2 good opportunities to use this. Better to stick with hard-hitting rulers if you can. Raid number 3 will be against Summer BB. If you're thinking to yourself, 3 Moon Cancers in a row, well, I wouldn't blame you, but you'd be wrong. She's going to be an alter ego this time, with 1.6 million hit points. In stage 1, she'll have 350,000 HP for the fight, and she'll start out the battle with a permanent and unremovable buff that increases crit strength by 100%. She also has a chance to use a skill on her turn that inflicts burn on all servants, dealing 1,000 damage per turn for 5 turns. Thankfully, we called a small break because this BB doesn't have access to her Noble Phantasm. When her gauge is filled, she'll get an extra attack though, so watch out for that. After losing a total of 350,000 HP, she'll enter stage 2. In this form, she'll start the battle with 450,000 HP, and she gains a buff at the beginning of the battle which grants her a 50% chance to evade Buster card damage for 5 turns. She also gains a fun skill that inflicts the pig status on 1 servant for 1 turn, stealing a page from Circe here. In stage 3, they mix things up by throwing Anastasia at us instead. Guess what class she is? Alter Ego? Moon Cancer? Nope, actually a caster, can you believe it? She'll have 350,000 HP and her skills will be different from BB's. At the start of the fight, she'll debuff your entire front line and reduce their Buster, Arts, and Quick Card effectiveness by 50%. This is permanent and unremovable. She also gains an extra NP gauge charge per turn for the first 3 turns. In addition to those things, she has a chance to use a skill which will apply sure hit to herself for 3 rounds, making evade skills a lot less reliable. If you make it through that though, you still have to face stage 4, where Anastasia has 450,000 HP and gains 1 more skill. This one will provide her with a buff, granting a 50% chance to evade arts card damage for 5 turns. Clearing fights in stage 1 through 4 will yield around 8,000 motivation points, so bring those bonuses. If you get through all of those, you'll be able to face Anastasia 1 more time. In her weakened final form, she has only 57,000 HP. Just like the first 2 sets of raids, timing plays a big role here. This time you want to fight only during the daytime and never at night. That will neutralize Bibi's 100% crit buff and Anastasia's 50% Buster Arts and Quick debuff. When you fight Bibi, leave your foreigners at home because they'll take double damage. Riders, casters, and assassins will take an extra 50% damage as well. Sabers, archers, and lancers will take half damage though, so feel free to bring the strongest knight class servants you have. Summer Bibi counts as large, so Saber Arthur is a solid choice in this case. She also carries the Divine trait, so Lancer Skahach and Ruler Martha have skills that deal extra damage. Archer Arjuna's Noble Phantasm has an extra chance to inflict death on divine enemies, but your odds of succeeding here are still incredibly slim. Lancer Enkidu has an NP that stuns divine enemies, and Lancer Karna's NP does bonus damage to divine servants. I haven't been able to test this last one, but apparently in her enemy form, she also qualifies as a threat to humanity. So if you got lucky on the 3rd banner by the time you're doing this fight, MHXX has up to 50% bonus damage with her Justice from the Ends of the World skill. When it comes to fighting Anastasia, you're going to want to bring Riders for the best damage and defense, but Rulers take reduced damage also. Traits aren't going to help you out too much, unfortunately. She's female but has class advantage over Jack and Carmilla. She's humanoid but has class advantage over Sanson and Izo. You could try Nightingale's Human Comprehension skill, which gives her extra damage against and reduced damage from humanoid enemies for 3 turns. But watch out after that because Berserkers are a bit fragile, as always. As long as you make it through though, you'll be able to earn your 3rd copy of Jean and reach NP level 4. The 4th and final raid will be Bibi again, but not as an alter ego again, and not as a Moon Cancer either. This time we're up against a foreigner. She has 1.8 million hit points and starts stage 1 with a 300,000 point health bar. At the beginning of the battle, she'll decrease defense for all of your servants with a permanent and unremovable debuff. She also has a skill available to her on her turn, which grants Ignore Invincible to herself, making normal defense a lot less reliable. In stage 2, she'll have 400,000 HP per fight, and gain a skill which decreases the NP gain of all servants by 50% for 3 turns. In stage 3, she'll start out with 500,000 hit points, and begin the battle with her NP gauge pre-filled. Finally, in stage 4, the fight will look the same, except her health bar will now have 600,000 hit points instead. Clearing battles in these first 4 stages drops about 4,000 motivation, technique, and imagination points, so definitely try to bring bonuses if you can. In the final battle against Bibi, she'll keep most of her skills, but she won't start with her NP charged, and she'll only have 59,000 hit points. Tip number 1, remember your timing. The debuff to your servant's defense only works on the first 3 days of the week. Make sure you cycle through the loop to at least day 4 before you continue fighting Bibi in order to make this battle just a bit easier to clear. Normal rules for fighting foreigners apply here. Don't bring Berserkers at all, and try to rely on alter egos if you can. They'll take half damage and do double in return. If you've been playing since Halloween, you probably have at least one NP5 alter ego in the form of Mecha Eli-chan, who has a powerful single target buster Noble Phantasm. If you're really lucky, you might have my absolute top pick for this fight, Melt, with 2 Scotties for support. You can also try to build parties around Kiara, Okita Alter, or Passion if you have them available to you. If you don't have enough alter egos to finish the job, you can try to rely on servants with bonuses against the large trait, servants with bonuses against the divine trait, servants with bonuses against the female trait, and servants with bonuses against the threat to humanity trait. Leave the Manslayers at home though, because Summer Bibi seems to be the only servant without the humanoid trait. If you can finish off this fight, you'll have your final copy of Jean, and this NP5 glass cannon of a berserker will be all yours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to farming because I am so far behind on this event. Not rolling for CEs at the beginning hurt me a bit, but I am super hyped for the BB and MHXX banner when it comes out. Let me know how summer's going for you, and definitely post suggestions I might have missed in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what team comps you have planned and which of these fights seems the most tricky to you. That's all I have for today though, so thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.